Hey, this story isn't loud. It doesn't chase you. It waits. If you've ever stayed somewhere longer than you meant to, this one already knows you. Take a breath. We'll go inside. The house didn't look abandoned. That was the problem. The lawn was trimmed. The windows were intact. The porch light still worked, glowing softly each night as if someone expected to come home. From the street, it looked cared for in the most unremarkable way possible, like a place that had simply decided not to draw attention to itself. People noticed that eventually. They noticed when the for sale sign went up and never came down, when listings disappeared from websites without explanation, when inspectors stopped returning calls, when contractors refused the job after walking through the front door once and standing in the entryway too long. No one ever said why. They just said the house wasn't ready. Elias arrived with a suitcase and no timeline. He told himself it was temporary. Everything had been temporary lately. Jobs, apartments, relationships that ended quietly, with no single moment to blame. He was good at leaving before anyone had to ask him why he was still there. The house was supposed to be a short-term solution. Cheap rent, month to month, no questions. The landlord hadn't shown up in person. The key had been left under the mat, exactly where the email said it would be. Lock it when you're inside, the message read. It doesn't like being left open. Elias frowned at that, then dismissed it. People wrote strange things when they were tired of explaining themselves. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the air was cool and still, like the house had been holding its breath. The entryway was narrow, but clean. No dust. No smell of mold or rot. The floors creaked faintly under Elias's weight, not in protest, but acknowledgement. He set his suitcase down and listened. There was no hum of electricity beyond what he could see, no ticking clock, no distant traffic noise bleeding in through the walls. It felt insulated from the rest of the world in a way Elias couldn't quite name. The living room held mismatched furniture arranged with an odd sense of intention. Not staged, not random. As if everything had been placed by someone who understood how long a person might sit in one spot before moving again. On the far wall, a single framed photo hung crooked. It showed the house itself, decades earlier. Fresh paint, younger trees, no people. Elias straightened the frame without thinking. The house creaked softly in response. The first night, Elias slept deeper than he had in months. No dreams, no waking panic, no half-remembered conversations replaying themselves in the dark. When he woke, the light filtering through the curtains suggested late morning. He checked his phone. No notifications. That wasn't unusual. What unsettled him was the silence that followed. No neighbors. No birds. No distant engines. He stood and walked to the front window. Outside, the street was there. Intact. Familiar. Cars passed occasionally. A person walked a dog on the opposite sidewalk. The world hadn't ended. It just sounded farther away. Elias found the first sign on the third day. It wasn't dramatic. No writing on the walls. No objects moved in the night. It was the spare bedroom. He hadn't opened the door before then. There hadn't been a reason. He was one person, one suitcase, one life paused between decisions. When he did open it, the room was furnished. A narrow bed, a dresser, a desk with a lamp that was already plugged in. The air felt warmer in there. On the desk sat a single envelope. No name, no stamp, just folded paper waiting. Elias didn't touch it. He closed the door gently and stood in the hallway longer than necessary, feeling something settle into place around him. That night, he heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving from one end of the house to the other. Elias sat up in bed, heart pounding, listening. The steps paused outside the spare bedroom door, then continued. Elias didn't open his door. He didn't call out. The house was quiet again within seconds, as if nothing had happened. But sleep did not return as easily. By the end of the first week, Elias stopped checking the locks. They were always locked when he reached for them. He stopped checking his phone, too. The lack of messages had become a strange relief, like proof that no one was waiting for him to explain himself. The house adjusted subtly. The thermostat seemed to anticipate him. Lights glowed dimmer in rooms he lingered in, brighter in rooms he avoided. The kitchen cabinet he used most often opened more easily than the others. When Elias noticed these things, the house creaked softly, the sound neither warning nor welcome, just acknowledgement. He finally opened the envelope on the 9th day. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You can stay," it read, "but you cannot hide here." No signature. No explanation. Elias folded the paper carefully and returned it to the envelope. He didn't throw it away. The second resident arrived, without knocking. Elias was in the kitchen when he heard the front door open and close with quiet certainty. Footsteps followed, lighter than his own. A woman stood in the living room when he stepped out to look. She held a duffel bag and wore a coat too thin for the season. Her eyes moved slowly, taking in the space, as if she were remembering something rather than seeing it for the first time. "Oh," she said, when she noticed him. "Good. It kept you too." Elias swallowed. "I didn't hear you come in." She smiled faintly. It doesn't always announce itself. They stood there, the house settling around them. "I'm Rowan," she said. Elias hesitated, then replied, "Elias." Rowan nodded. "How long has it let you stay?" The phrasing landed wrong. "About a week," Elias said. Rowan exhaled slowly. Then it's still deciding. Rowan chose the spare bedroom without asking. Elias watched from the hallway as she set her duffel bag down beside the bed, fingers lingering on the edge of the desk like she was confirming something already known. "It changed," she said. Elias frowned. "What did?" "The room," Rowan replied. "It wasn't like this the first time." Elias felt a slow chill move through him. "You've been here before?" Rowan nodded. "Not long enough to learn not to fight it." She opened the desk drawer. Inside lay the same envelope Elias had seen days earlier. Or maybe another one, identical in every way. Rowan didn't open it. "It only gives you what you're ready to read," she said. The house creaked softly, deeper this time, like approval. They fell into a rhythm without discussing it. Not friendship, not partnership, something quieter. They occupied opposite ends of the house, crossing paths in doorways and hallways, exchanging small updates that sounded like weather reports. Basement door sticks. The sink runs cold on the left side. It doesn't like loud music. Elias tested that once, out of stubborn curiosity. The speakers cut out mid-song, silence dropping so abruptly it felt physical. Rowan didn't comment. She just glanced up, eyebrows raised, as if to say, "Now you know." At night, Elias sometimes heard voices, not words, just the sense of conversation happening behind walls he didn't remember existing. Rowan heard them too. He could tell by the way she paused mid-step, listening, deciding whether to acknowledge them or let them pass. On the 12th day, Elias tried to leave. It wasn't dramatic. No packed bags, no declaration. He stepped onto the porch, keys in hand, and felt the air shift around him. Heavier, thicker, like wading into water. The street looked the same, but the sound was wrong. No engines, no footsteps, no wind. Elias turned back toward the door. It was closed. He hadn't closed it. He reached for the handle. Locked. Behind him, the porch light flickered on. Though it was still daylight, Elias stood very still. When he finally stepped back inside, the door opened easily, like it always had. Rowan was sitting on the stairs, waiting. "It does that," she said gently. Elias laughed once, sharp and breathless. "That's it? That's all it does?" Rowan met his eyes. "That's all it needs to do." That night, Elias dreamed of rooms without doors, spaces that widened the longer he stood in them, hallways that curved back into themselves, windows that showed scenes from other houses, other lives paused at their own thresholds. When he woke, the house was quiet again, normal, almost apologetic. On the kitchen table lay a second envelope. This one was addressed Elias. He didn't open it. Rowan finally told him why she stayed. They sat on opposite ends of the living room, the light low, the house humming faintly beneath the silence. "I left someone," Rowan said, not the dramatic kind. No fight, no final words. Elias waited. "I told myself it was kinder that way," she continued. "That disappearing would hurt less than staying and failing." The house creaked softly, not in judgment, in recognition. "I came here the first time because I couldn't stand the empty space after," Rowan said. "It gave me somewhere to put it." Elias thought of his own exits, the way he'd learned to leave cleanly, efficiently, without mess. "And the second time?" he asked. Rowan smiled, sad and honest. "The house didn't think I was done yet." The envelopes multiplied. One on the kitchen counter, one on the hallway console. One slipped beneath Elias's bedroom door while he slept. Each bore his name, written in the same careful hand. He began to avoid them, stepping around them like obstacles he couldn't afford to acknowledge. Rowan watched him do this without comment. Eventually, she said one morning, "It stops asking." Elias looked up sharply. "And then what?" Rowan hesitated. "Then it decides for you." The house creaked once, long and low. The third resident arrived during a storm. Rain hammered the roof, wind pushing against the walls like it was trying to remember something. Elias heard the door open and close, felt the shift in the house before he heard the footsteps. This one didn't introduce himself. He dropped a soaked backpack by the door and stood there, dripping onto the floor, breathing hard. "It let me in," he said, voice raw. "So don't tell me to leave." Rowan appeared behind Elias, tense. "We won't," she said. "What's your name?" The man hesitated. "I don't think that matters anymore." The house creaked. Rowan and Elias exchanged a glance. They both understood the warning. With 3 people, the house grew smaller. Not physically, intentionally. Rooms felt narrower, hallways longer, silence heavier. The new resident slept on the couch, never upstairs, never in the spare room. At night, Elias heard him whispering to the walls. In the mornings, envelopes appeared, in places Elias hadn't seen before. Inside cabinets, on the basement steps, tucked into the pages of books. Some addressed to Elias, some to Rowan, none to the third. Elias opened one. The paper inside was thick, textured. "You learned how to leave," it read. "You never learned how to stay." Elias folded it slowly, hands shaking. Across the room, Rowan watched him, eyes unreadable. "It's not wrong," she said. Elias swallowed. "That doesn't make it fair." Rowan shook her head. "It's not here to be fair." The house creaked again, louder this time. The 3rd resident disappeared on the 17th day. No struggle, no noise, just absence. His backpack was gone, the spot on the couch empty, the floor dry, as if he'd never stood there dripping rain. Elias searched the house anyway, panic rising. Basement, closet, backyard, nothing. Rowan stood in the doorway, face pale. "It didn't let him stay," she said. Elias turned on her. "What did it do to him?" Rowan's voice was barely audible. "It let him leave." Elias felt cold settle deep in his chest. The house creaked once. Final. That night, Elias packed. Not to escape, to choose. He placed his belongings neatly by the door. The suitcase zipped, handle upright. The envelopes remained. Rowan watched from the stairs. "If you open the last one," she said, "you might not like what it asks." Elias nodded. "I know." He picked up the envelope with his name written most recently. Opened it. "Staying is a decision," it read. "So is leaving." Elias exhaled slowly. He looked at Rowan. "What did yours say?" Rowan swallowed. "It asked me who I was waiting for." The house was silent now. "Listen." Elias opened the door. The street was there, loud, real. Cars passing, wind moving through trees, no resistance, no silence. The house had made its choice. Elias stepped out. The door closed behind him, gently. When he looked back, the porch light was off. The house stood dark and still, as if he had never been there at all. Rowan stayed. Not because the house asked her to, because she finally knew the answer. The envelope stopped appearing. The room settled into a shape that fit her. And for the first time, the house felt quiet in a way that wasn't waiting. Months later, the house remained unsold. People still asked about it, wondered, moved on. Sometimes, late at night, a light turned on in the spare bedroom. And sometimes, someone walked past and felt an inexplicable sense of relief. As if the house had decided something important and was finally at rest. Thank you for staying. Some places don't trap you. They simply stop you from leaving until you understand why you came. If this house felt familiar, that doesn't mean it's yours. It means you recognize something it was holding. This has been the house that let us stay. I'll meet you again, wherever the door decides to open.